Peace is the path to the prosperity of a nation. Let peace reign. On the news this afternoon, inauguration of minister designates underway. Communication expert criticizes late reshuffling of minister designates. Environmentalist speaks on latest oil spill in Bodo, River State. Fear grips women in Orashi region, River State, as flooding season nears. ECOWAS rejects 3-year transition plan proposed by Niger military junta. On the foreign scene, Human Rights Watch accuses Saudi border guards of mass killing of migrants. I am Constance Mega with the news. And we'll begin the news this Monday afternoon with a report that the inauguration of 45 minister designates is underway at the State House Conference Center in Abuja. The inauguration is done in alphabetical order according to their state of origin. Among those who have taken their oath of office include former governor of Ebonyi State, David Umahi, who is now the Minister for Works, Festus Keyamo as Minister for Aviation and Aerospace Development, Betta Edu as Minister for Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, John Owan Eno as Minister for Sports Development, among others. Recall that yesterday, the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation said all the minister designates had concluded their documentation processes. Well, this comes after President Bulletin renamed the Federal Ministry of Environment and Ecological Management as the Federal Ministry of Environment. A statement by the spokesman to the President, Ajuri Ngelale, said the president also appointed Abubakar Momo as Niger Delta Minister and reassigned Adeboyega Oyetola to the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy. Mr. Momo was initially appointed as the Minister for Youth. The Federal Ministry of Youth is to be reassigned to a minister designate soon. Bumi Tunjiojo is the Minister of Interior. Saidu Alkali is the Minister of Transportation. Well, Mr. Ngelale said both ministers of state in the oil and gas sector are now domiciled in the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources, with Heineken Nokbobiri as the Minister of State, Oil, Petroleum Resources, and Ekperipe Ekpo as the Minister of State, Gas, Petroleum Resources, among those sworn in. I beg your pardon. Meanwhile, a communication expert at Yaga Africa, Mark Amaza, says President Bola Tinubu's decision to reshuffle ministerial offices at the last minute was a sign that the administration was not fully prepared to assign portfolios. Mr. Amaza said that expertise should have been considered before assigning portfolios. He said this on Nigeria Info FM's Morning Crossfire.
I feel like all this time should have given him is enough to be able to know precisely who goes where. I know there will always be lobbying and last minute thinking and rejigging, but it should not be when you're already putting out the list. Ministers, after you've gone through screening and you've assigned portfolios, you're still trying to figure out who you place where.
Well, the communications expert said ministries like that of sports and youth development should have been handled by young and experienced people.
Yes, the age is really important. We need to have, it would be really good to see a young person as youth minister of youth. But beyond just being young, somebody who is capable, who is competent. Same for sports. You need someone who has experience dealing with around sports development, sports policy, youth development policy for the Ministry of Youth. And we're not lacking in such people.
Moving on, environmental justice activist Fineface Dumnamene has expressed concern about repeated oil spills in Bodo community in Gokana local government area of River State. Mr. Dumnamene said this shortly after another oil spill was reported in Bodo community at the weekend. Dumnamene, who is the executive director of the Youth and Environmental Advocacy Center, said the incident happened on Friday. He spoke on Nigeria Info FM.
This particular spill, from what we have seen on the ground, happened at a place that is very grassy, crops are around, and you could see the spill pumping out from the ground. People are worried that this multiple spill will keep occurring in this community because we are even beginning to lose count the number of oil spills that have occurred in Bodo. Basically, they operate that facility, the Tanzania Delta pipeline on which the spill has occurred. The National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency to take steps to carry the joint investigation visit that will expose the cause of the oil spill, which has been alleged to be equipment failure.
Well, as you may know, this is the 5th oil spill in Bodo community. 4 oil spills were recorded between August 3rd and 31st this year. I beg your pardon. That was last year. A report by the Joint Investigative Team, JIV, in August last year, 2022, showed that Shell spilled 5 barrels of crude oil into Bodo community. And as part of their demands after the last oil spills, youths from the community demanded 40 million naira as compensation to each member of the community from Shell. They also requested the provision of relief materials for those affected to cushion the effect of the spills. In other news, some women in the Orashi region of Rivers State are dreading the predicted flood in some parts of the state. Now, as you may know, the 4 local government areas of Abu-Odua, Ahoda East, Ahoda West, and Ogba, Egbema, and Doni, which make up the Orashi region, are among the areas listed by NIMET to experience flooding this year. 2 women who spoke to our correspondent say their hearts skip whenever they remember that it's almost that time of the year when they experience flooding in the area. While these women say they suffer hunger and ill health during this period as they harvest their cassava prematurely as part of proactive measures to protect their livelihoods from being washed away. Well, they called on the government to dredge the Orashi region, the Orashi River, to reduce the impact of the looming flood on them.
Some of the houses, they enter even up to roof. Our people will they suffer for this side once flood time reach. Sometimes you go feel they sleep with your pikin until before you go know pikin don't fall inside water. And that time, no way to go in Biama, go buy something. So people they die during the flood time. Well, we they suffer. We they beg government, make government come help us. Now we have to sleep. Make government come help us. Build one small camp, keep for us, so that we go fit stay here.
Children they sick, adults they sick. They're gonna dig the river for us. Let the river go down so the water no go come up like that. Now, sef, our BP don't high because of the flood wey they come. October don't enter. Now we they rush. How to dig cassava? The cassava sef never mature. We they hungry, oh. Government make gonna help us, oh.
Well, a fisherman from John Kramer 3 community, Ahoda West local government area, Joshua Dokobo, also spoke on this.
If you fall sick, you are on your own. Last year flood, one of the women died in process of the flood. Why? No access to good drinking water, no access to good medicine, no medication, no hospital, nothing. You can't access anything at all. If the government can help us in terms of medication, food item, cassava stem, we can't even go out to fish again. If the flood submerge again, I don't think we can have access to the Imbiama again. Because when you are coming from Akinima to JK, you will see that the road is almost cut off. So the Shell, Petroleum, and the government should do something about that road.
Well, last week, the River State Flood Management Committee said plans are being put in place in areas likely to experience flooding in the state this year. The secretary of the committee, Inime Aguma, made this known during a meeting with the chairman of the 23 local government areas in the state.
The Ministry of Environment has commenced the mapping out of specific areas and study of terrain so that we would understand the very, very hot areas where we would need to evacuate people from. This would also include provision of certain materials to ensure that our IDP camps are in good condition to receive persons that are displaced. For some local government areas where we cannot site IDP camps, we are going to be hiring boats, houseboats, to house the persons that will be displaced.
Well, she also spoke of other measures being put in place to tackle the flood situation in the state.
We want to ensure that we move our people to safety in the eventuality of any flood, and we want to ensure that we record 0 death of persons during this flood season, and also to convince our citizens to be responsive to themselves, to move out when they are asked to move out, and move into secure places which the government and the local government areas will provide for them.
Meanwhile, the River State government has been urged to make preparations for a post-flood recovery effort to help flood victims recover from the disaster. Veronica Joseph of the VN Voice of Rivers Widows and the Girl Child Initiative tells our correspondent that providing flood insurance and emergency management techniques will help cushion the negative effect of flooding on women in flood-prone communities in the state.
After
after the flood, what happens to the women? The women were left alone. We all know that the women in the rural area are the ones that provide most of the succor for the family. They generate income through their cassava farms. But there should be a support for these women. Is it their STEM so that they can go back to their farms? Within 6 months, they can have something to eat. But when they are being left alone, they live in hunger, in sickness, and in disease, which is not healthy enough for the life of the women.
Well, she also called on the government to adopt holistic approaches to educating rural dwellers and also building flood barriers to lessen the risk of flooding in the region. Away from that, a member of the Rivers State Government Evaluation and Assessment Team, Emma Wike, says the cost of constructing the ring road across wetland would have cost the state government more. Mr. Wike was reacting to reports that the ring road was originally meant to pass through the Ilichi waterside and not densely populated areas. We're speaking with our correspondent on this. The estate surveyor and valuer said the state government and the contractor must have done a comprehensive assessment before taking their final decision.
I'm sure that the government would have done their environmental impact assessment to now know where the road will pass. But having said so, let's start. Where did the road start from? From UTC Junction. The whole of that place is virgin land. Until you get to where they call it St. John Junction, it's from there that you now have properties. If you are talking about having a coastal road, have you also considered the cost of constructing a coastal road? Because it's going to cost you more to construct in those wetlands than in area where you have the solid soil. I'm not speaking for the government.
Well, Mr. Imawike advised owners of properties earmarked for demolition along the right-of-way of the ring road against going to court. Moving on, human rights lawyer Paul Wankwala says the acceptance of vigilante groups like OSPAC by communities in Rivers State is a sign that Nigeria is a failing state. Mr. Paul, who is the Executive Director, Legal International Society for Social Justice and Human Rights, spoke with our correspondent. And he said the failure of the Nigerian police led to the formation of vigilante groups by local communities.
The Nigerian police failed abysmally in the performance of their duties. And in every community, daily, we hear reported cases of wanton destruction of lives and properties. But the security indices cannot be looked at to fathom whether or not the country is affected. There are other indices that have to be looked into. I will say Nigeria is rather a failing state, but not a failed state. If security is the only indices, I will tell you, yes, Nigeria is a failed state.
Well, Mr. Paul also says he's concerned that the vigilante groups are now acting beyond their roles. Still to come, ECOWAS rejects 3-year transition plan proposed by Niger Republic's military junta. Stay tuned. Sarah have stormed the Kano State High Court, where the state's governorship election petition tribunal is sitting. At the resumed hearing of the governorship elections petition tribunal today, government officials, including the secretary to the state government, Bafa Bichi, the chief of staff to the governor, Shehu Sagagi, and several commissioners and top aides of the state governor were seen at the tribunal. Well, this comes after the chairman of the panel, Justice Flora Ngozi Azingi, alleged that some lawyers with cases before the panel were trying to influence their, were reaching out to her and members of her panel in order to influence their decisions. The NBA had also written to the tribunal secretariat to seek an audience with the judge to review those allegedly making the bribery advances. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has rejected the 3-year transition plan proposed by the Niger Republic's military junta. Recall that the coup leader, General Abdurrahman Chiani, had at a meeting with the ECOWAS delegation led by General Abdulsalami Abubakar, retired, in Niamey on Saturday, Affairs, Peace and Security. Abdel Fattah Musa says the proposal is unacceptable to ECOWAS, setting the ground for a military operation. Meanwhile, thousands of Nigerians flooded the streets yesterday, declaring support for the military junta again. In business, the National Emergency Management Agency says it has commenced arrangements for the distribution of 180 trucks of rice to various states as recommended by the National Economic Council. Well, last Thursday, the federal government announced a 5 billion naira palliative for each state of the federation and 180 trucks of rice as part of measures to assuage the pains of the subsidy removal. In entertainment, the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency, DSVA, has strongly condemned the comments of Big Brother Naija All-Stars housemate Seyi Awolowo. Well, Seyi had, during a conversation with White Money, said he had opened a miscellaneous account for his son to enable him to have sex with people's daughters, and his comments generated controversy on social media. In sports, Spanish Football Federation chief Luis Rubiales has drawn a heavy criticism in his home country for kissing footballer Jennifer Hermoso on the mouth after the World Cup final in Sydney. Well, Spain's Equality Minister Irene Montero said it is a form of sexual assault that women suffer. And Montero said the assault has been invisible until now and that it must not be normalized.
And now, we bring you news from around the world.
A report by Human Rights Watch has accused Saudi border guards of the mass killing of migrants along the Yemeni border. The report says hundreds of people, many of them Ethiopians, who cross war-torn Yemen to reach Saudi Arabia have been shot dead. Now, Saudi Arabia has previously rejected allegations of systematic killings, but the Human Rights Watch report contains graphic testimony from migrants.
We found evidence that Saudi border guards used explosive weapons and shot people at close range in what appears to be a policy targeting migrants and asylum seekers, including women and children, at the border. Human Rights Watch believes this may amount to crimes against humanity. Saudi Arabia's border forces should stop intentionally using lethal force.
Well, that's the news, but before we go, another look at the highlights of the major stories. On the news this afternoon, you heard that the inauguration of Minister Designates is underway in Abuja. A communication expert, Mark Amaza, has expressed concern at the late reshuffling of some minister designates. An environmentalist, Fineface Dumnamene, has reacted to the latest oil spill in Bodo community, Rivers State. And fear has gripped women in Orashi region, Rivers State, as flooding season nears. ECOWAS has rejected the 3-year transition plan proposed by Niger military junta. On the foreign scene, Human Rights Watch has accused Saudi border guards of mass killing of migrants. The news was edited by Onyeka Chinwosu. Mostly cloudy weather in Port Harcourt this afternoon. To reach the news team, call, send SMS or WhatsApp to 0808 721 7215. Peace is the path to the premonition. I'm Constance Mega. Thank you so much for listening.